evening. Welcome to the Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. Tonight I have Cliff Stephen. Cliff has a podcast, Truth to Faith. Faith. What did I tell you? Truth to Faith. And we're here to talk about a little bit about his podcast, a little bit about Bigfoot and wherever he wants to take it. Cliff, since I totally slaughtered your introduction, I'm going to hand it to you and let you do your own.
All right.
Sorry.
Well, I appreciate having me on. Like you said, my name's Cliff Stephen. I have a podcast called Truth to Faith, and I'm a truther and I'm a Christian. And some people might not think they mix, but they absolutely mix, and everything's tied together, I believe. And the reason I came on, because my first truther thing that I can remember was Bigfoot. I remember right when I heard about it, I fell in love because it's mysterious and it lives in the woods. And, you know, a lot of people didn't believe, but I believed right out the gate.
You said you had some experiences that could have been a Bigfoot.
Yeah, once we went camping up in New Hampshire in the mountains high up, and we were at a campground, but there was like electric wires going down beside it, and I went while the sun was setting, and I just got this weird feeling of like being afraid, and it was dark though, and I just went back to what I was doing. And then another time I was asking the Bigfoot to come, and one morning I was going to work at 4:30, and I was going by this patch of woods, and I got this feeling like something was watching me, and I was petrified, and I was too scared to look over. And I was like, if that's you, because I've been asking you to come, I'm not as ready as I thought I was. And I just kept driving.
Well, at least you're honest about it.
Hey.
I guess that's where the truth comes in, huh?
Yeah, I don't mind going against a couple of guys, but a Bigfoot, I don't know.
No, negative, Ghost Rider. Sister will be right back. Sister will be right back in her zip code after that. So you touch on a little bit of everything. What kind of subjects do you like to touch on the most?
So like my journey was kind of all over the place. I went through a lot of trauma, and I grew up in a poor neighborhood, Irish Catholic. It was run by the Irish Mafia, so everybody was trying to be hard guys. And I mean, there was some psychopaths around, and you know, I just went through a lot, and my faith kind of got me through it, even though I didn't commit to it fully until about 3 years ago. But when COVID started, I started going down rabbit holes again. And, you know, for some reason I started on child trafficking, because that just like really bummed me out that that's the world we live in, that kids got to be fearful of that. And I almost had a nervous breakdown, and I got into flat earth, and I had this crazy experience where I was in the presence of God. And that inspired me to start my podcast, to maybe help somebody, you know, get to the path of salvation. And yeah, so that's why I started it. You know, I'm good at reading people and situations. So I see what's going on in the world, and I'm trying to, you know, maybe help somebody.
You said you had a weird experience with God. Can you go into that, or is that a no?
Let me just plug this charger in. I'm sorry.
You go right ahead. This is Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. I expect Swamp Kitty to come through anytime, Zoom. But I got a water bottle, so there. Don't start none, won't be none, Swamp Kitty.
So I was going down all these rabbit holes. You know, I became a truther in 2012. I started believing that something was coming, and when COVID hit, that was kind of like open my eyes, like something's wrong here. You know, the elite, something's going on. And at this time, as I'm going down all these rabbit holes, my buddy Brett got flat earth, and I was just like, even though I know, they fill us with propaganda and they play with us, and I still couldn't wrap my mind around the flat earth. But as I started digging into it, I mean, it makes total sense. There's a book that talks about emergency landings and why it it doesn't work for the current globe, like where they landed in an emergency. They should have landed somewhere else, but they were way off course. But if you put their landings on the flat earth map, it makes perfect sense. So that was like one big red flag. Another one is you can see too far, with the cameras and stuff. There should be curvature. You should only be able to see either the tops of things or nothing, and you can see it all. So that was a big thing. And I started believing, and my buddy said, "Come over to my house. I want to watch a video with you." So we watched this video where somebody sent up a rocket, like a toy one, pretty big, like 4 feet, with a GoPro, and it goes up and it hits something and it continues to spin. So I believe it hit the firmament, and then it kind of goes sideways, and you can see the sun and the moon, and they're right over the horizon. They're not way far away like they tell us. And when I seen that, I started getting really hot, and I was like, I got to go outside. I need air. And I went outside, and like my mind was like, because we have this belief of this globe in space. And when I realized it was all a lie, like I started just overheating. And then I walked outside and I seen a bright light, and my eyes didn't hurt, but it was super bright. And I felt a love that I can't even describe, but it encompassed me. It felt like I was in a warm tub. Like I felt it over my whole body, and I just felt a peace, a joy, a love. The way I love my daughter times a million. That's the only way I could describe it. But I believe I was in the presence of God, and that's what inspired me to start my podcast.
So when you say you went down a bunch of rabbit holes, that can be pretty stressful on your mind sometimes. I mean, it can get to you because I guess with the field I once was in, I've seen what a person is capable of doing to another person that they say they love,
Yeah.
and you see things you can't unsee, and
Yeah.
it stays with you. It seems like as long as you stay busy, you're fine. But once you stop, it's like slamming on brakes when you're doing 80. Everything, the force just hits you, and it all you can't keep your mind occupied enough. At what point do you think you got to that point?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was totally on the urge of having a mental breakdown. I remember crying to my mom, like, "Mom, this is going on, and these poor children." And she's like, "But you can't do nothing." And I'm like, "I know, but it's happening, and nobody's doing nothing. People won't even talk about the issue." When I get it, it's gross. You don't even want to fathom in your brain, but poor children are going through this. Like, I just felt overwhelmed. I felt helpless. I couldn't do anything. And that drove it. I didn't like that feeling of helplessness, knowing of, the evil in the world.
There's a lot of it, but there's a lot of good people too,
There is.
and I do believe the light shines through the darkness. Um,
Amen.
so when you're digging in your rabbit holes
Yeah.
and you have an experience that enlightened you, I can tell by your posts that you're just a very spiritual person. You look like you do a lot of good in the community, and you could tell there's just a lot of love there. A lot of warm, glowing light is just a good way of saying, because I see you look like CrossFit, and you're working with kids, and so you do a lot in the community, and I respect that. What was the rabbit hole that you went down that you felt like you kind of, other than the trafficking children, that you felt like you just had to pull yourself back out of, regroup, and just hit it at another angle? Because I know you had a really good podcast with Ron Moorhead.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
So basically what happened was, as I was going down those rabbit holes, I really wasn't as close to God as I wanted to. But after I had that experience, I started praying more, started reading the Bible. And now I put that first before I do anything else, because I can't go down them holes if God's not first in my life, because it's hard to handle. But yeah, Ron Moorhead was great. I think the Bigfoot topic's huge. And like I said, ever since I was a kid, I was drawn to it. And, you know, I started believing that, I was always kind of in the woo camp. I know some people are in the ape camp. Some
was
people,
fine. Hey, it was fine. You be what you want to be.
yeah. So I went from the woo camp to starting to believe they were Nephilim or related to the Nephilim. And that's why, like, people say, they'll hear the mind speak, or they'll see a Bigfoot in the woods, and then, paranormal things that happen in their houses. And I've seen documentaries where they said they leave the messages with, like, Scrabble tiles, but they don't, they hear them come in, but they don't see footprints. It's like they hang down. So I'm definitely in the camp that they're interdimensional. And then recently I talked with Bo from the Bump Cup podcast. And when I told him I think it's the Nephilim, he said, well, it's funny you say that, because I just had a guest on, and she mind speaks with this Bigfoot. And he told me, she asked him, what are you? And he said, I'm an Eliud. And he told me he didn't even know what that word was. And I was like, I didn't know what it was until I got off and I looked it up. And what I found with the Eliud was the children of the Nephilim, descendants of the Watchers, and also the forefathers of the early inhabitants of Canaan. So I was like, wow, that makes sense in my mind, that maybe they're long lost family members of the Nephilim.
So, what do you think of the DNA? Because the DNA, I mean, you could be on both sides of the fence, because they say the mitochondrial DNA is human. And it's got unknown with that, coupled with that. And so does that kind of drive it
It
home
makes
for you?
sense, right? There's
Yeah,
some human
right.
DNA, and then there's
Yeah.
DNA they don't know what it is. So what if that's the angelic fallen angel DNA? Because the Bible does say that angels came down, they had dinner with Lot. They invited them. They were basically like us. They were solid. They weren't. I think they could be like us in our form, and they have an angelic side, and that's how Bigfoot is kind of able to just disappear, or, there's steps and then there's no more steps and they're gone. I think they might have some type of power where they could, either with their vocalization, because they can go so low and so high that they could transform into another dimension, or a dimension we can't see.
Do you think there's two types? Maybe one that's interdimensional and one that's just flesh and blood, or are you up in the air about that?
So yeah, I do agree with that, because when I talked to Ron Moorhead, he also said that he believes there are two kinds. And that lady who talked with Bo, she said that Bigfoot told her there's Native American gorillas from America, and then there's these other beings. And Ron Moorhead, he said that he believes that, like us, they're all different. Some have different abilities or no abilities, or, they're all different. So I do believe, there's probably a whole bunch of different types of them. And there are these special ones that are related, but maybe they crossbreed too. So.
Well, if you do the naughty with the wrong kind, you're probably going to get something a little messed up like that. That kind of cross and probably inbred too. I'd hate to run into an inbred one. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard a pretty good growl up in the mountains of North Carolina, and I was like, there's no way a person can do that. And I turned around and looked at my husband. I said, did you record that? And he looked down. He's like, no. I said, that's just wrong, man. But so they're not all patty type. I know that. Um, at what point? Cause I mean, I'm going all over the board. I literally just got off of work. I'm still on my BDUs.
Yeah, it's all good.
I forgot the time went up, and I was like, I gotta leave an hour early, but I was really leaving on time. Go figure. Jesus. So I'm like, welcome to my world. But I know in North Carolina, a lot of what I hear, you hear in like you war, you hear like the big patty type, and but most people that I have spoken to that are really candid. They describe them as athletic, useful muscles, tall, slender. So I mean, there are different kind. What do you think? That just your opinion. I know you're still up in the air. What do you think? You think the patty kind or the patty type is different than the tall, slender kind? Do you think that's the big ones have more of a gift or some kind of power than the little ones?
I honestly, I'm not too sure. I would think the bigger ones would probably be more related to the Nephilim, where they were described as giants. But like the skunk ape down in Florida and down the south, I mean, I don't know. Maybe those are the native gorillas, or another thing that she said, which was pretty wild. She said that the Bigfoot told her that if you see white eye shine, then more than likely it's a good one. That if you see red eye shine, it might be a bad one. That it's a good chance it's a bad one. I thought that was pretty interesting because I have heard people say they seen, white eye shine, and some said they seen red eye shine. So I thought that was pretty amazing as well.
So, are you going to take the leap and start going out and doing a little research for yourself?
So I thought about it, but I'm currently not driving right now. But there is a place near my house called the Bridgewater Triangle, and that's like my where I live in Franklin, Mass. It's kind of like the edge of that. But in this triangle, there has been Bigfoot sightings. There's been like giant birds, giant cats, ghosts. There's a documentary out there called The Bridgewater Triangle if you just want to go check it out. But I was thinking about going there, but nobody will go with me.
What?
Yeah,
Man,
no one.
listen, you need to tell your friends call me and I'll have a talk with them, or I'll send you down some friends to go out with you. I know I have spoken to someone that saw like a big thunderbird.
Oh yeah.
And he said it was huge. I mean, the wingspan was just crazy big. And so there are some really strange. I've heard of gigantic owls perching together with other gigantic owls, watching people come up. And I was like, I'm not an owl person. Every time I've ever seen one in daylight, something super bad has happened in my life, brother. So if I
Wow.
see an owl, I put it in reverse, back up, and I go back home. He made a believer out of me. So you are planning to go out. I actually, we were talking the other night in my group about jump bags. This one gentleman said a UV light's really good. Stuff to make a fire. I've been told that you have a better experience if you just enjoy yourself, listen to some music, kind of chill out. I've also been told that you have a better chance at having an experience if you just put your phone down and you pick up a book and you read. Um, so eh, the both times, I've had a really up close. I wouldn't say they were encounters because one of them I didn't even realize what it was until I went back and looked at the footage. But I was running my mouth just like I am now, blah 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 blah. And my friend was beside me, like, You know, someone's like half listening to you, but they don't want to be rude. Both times I just yapping my jaws, and that's when we started having activity. And
Wow.
I think that you would enjoy it. I think even if you just go for a hike, you don't have to get in and do fancy stuff like you see on, the movies or on TV. You don't have to go in fancy. Go in raw, man. Just go in.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you feel about guns. I always have a gun. I don't think it'll stop a Bigfoot, but it'll stop a crazy person coming at you. That's just, that's just the way I feel. People are crazy, man. But so where do you think you're going to take your podcast to? What direction did you see yourself going?
Honestly, I'm kind of on the fence. Like we talked before, it's a lot of work and it's taking up a lot of time, and so I don't know. I got a month more a guest, and then I'm gonna kind of sit down and think of what I could do different or how I could make it better or not do it anymore. That's kind of where I'm at. But
No, you can't. You can't just stop, bro. No, I mean, just don't stop.
I know
Don't
it.
stop.
I know.
Keep
I'm
grinding.
trying. I'm trying. It's more because of like work. My current job, they lay me off in the summer, so it's stressing me out, money and paying the bills. So when that's safe, then I feel comfortable to podcast. But when that's like shaky, now I'm getting shaky. But
Family first.
have you ever heard of Esau from the
Not right off
Bible?
the top of my head.
So
Nope, not really.
Esau is the twin brother of Jacob from the Bible, and
Okay, yeah.
it says a funny thing. When I read this when I was reading the Bible, it kind of blew my mind. Now, just a quick overhaul. Twins Esau and Jacob are born to Isaac and Rebekah. It's from Genesis. Esau sells his birthright. Esau marries out of the covenant. Genesis. Jacob receives the greater blessing. Now, it's funny because when I read the Bible and heard this, immediately I thought Bigfoot. It says in Genesis 25, and Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived, and the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, two nations are in thy womb. Two manner of people shall be separated from the bowels. Now it says two manner of people, two nations. And one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. So when I read that, and later on it talks about the father loved Esau because he loved his venison, but the mother loved the other brother. But when I read that, I mean, to me, it just sounded like Bigfoot. So I looked it up, and there is a theory out there that that could have been a Bigfoot. But what's funny is when I looked up the Eliud, it said the first dwellers of Canaan, and that's where Esau and his brothers from, Canaan. So I don't know. It makes you wonder, like, could they be part angel from the Nephilim? That's really where my mind's at. I think they're definitely related to things they can do. And then there's the regular plain gorillas. That's where I'm at.
Well, I think that you go where your research takes you.
Yeah,
And you may
absolutely.
not agree with other people, but you're allowed not to agree. People are allowed to disagree on things. But it seems like to me that's where your research is, or it's where you're starting at.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go ahead and say this: I've got 5 Pentecostal preachers in my family, and if they ever hear I forgot who Esau was, God, that's not gonna be good.
I won't tell
But
anyone.
thank So the more you dig,
Yeah,
the more it makes sense to you.
correct.
So you get you get your scripture down, and you start finding other related scripture that confirms where the direction you're heading.
Yes. And it's funny too because I was like, I went from like being pro Bigfoot to against Bigfoot, thinking it was just a demon and evil, like with the coming home and messing people's houses up and scaring them. And then I heard this podcast where the lady talked about it, and she asked him, why are you talking to me and trying to help me? She had just gone through like really bad stuff where she tried to commit suicide. She couldn't pay the bills or something. And then this Bigfoot comes and he told her that he was trying to be saved, like trying to be forgiven by the creator. So in my brain, it made sense. Like it all makes sense to me that, what my research, what I found.
So what's your next step on it? You're going to continue to look in scripture, which I encourage you, or are you going to try to apply that with what you're going to do in the field in the future, or you're going to?
I mean, I don't know. I would like to go out Bigfooting just because I think it would be fun. But like I said, I can't get no one to go with me. Um, I think the reason I had Ron Moorhead on is because I just looked up to him. Like I remember when I started getting into the rabbit holes in 2012, and I kind of fell away for a few years, and then I found the Sierra Sounds. Like it blew my mind. So I had to have Ron Moorhead on because I think everything is a piece of the overall puzzle, and in my eyes, it's that the Bible is real. God created this place special for us, that we are special beings. We're not on a giant rock going through endless space, with no meaning, that we crawled out of the oceans and there was a big bang. I just don't buy it. I think, we are special in, Jesus Christ is our salvation. And I know it's a Bigfoot show, but I just think it is all tied together.
You are fine, because you know what? It's the Bigfoot show, but it's also your show. You take it where you want to take it. That's why your
No.
name is right there, and I'm looking at it. Cliff
Yeah.
Stephen. There you go. Well, I'm gonna tell you something. I mean, I had a near death experience, and it was. I mean, I think. Um, just we'll talk. We'll get back to that.
All right. It's all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, we're recording, so I can't freeze it. So I mean, I have my own spiritual journey. I think a lot of people think because I'm spiritual and I'm a Christian that I judge other people's faiths or what they believe in. I mean, my friend's a witch. I love her. I don't judge. Um, that is their that is her background. That is where her teaching leads her to. It doesn't make her a bad person. I mean,
Not at
she is
all.
very she's a very spiritual person. She's very blunt too, but I love her. Her name's Emmy. I'll have to put you in touch with her because you guys would just changing or just back and forth having a good conversation. I think you would really enjoy it. But I always keep my mind open. And, the reason I keep my mind open is I don't know everything. And a
Yes.
lot of people do think because I am Christian, don't get me wrong. Sometimes my husband looks at me like he's going to dig a bar of soap out of his pocket and wash my mouth out. Because I can be real raw, but I got that from law enforcement, 120 pounds when you start and you're 5'9" and a half at the time. I mean, I had to be a little bit raw just to get my foot in the door. But I
Well,
totally forgot what.
I agree with you fully though. Like, and that is the boundary, you know, because a lot of Christians are really judgy, and I'm not that judgy. Jesus said, love your neighbor like yourself. So nobody should be judging anybody. Um, and
Thank you.
I'm not a perfect human being. I struggle with watching Walking Dead when I probably should be reading the Bible. So I can't throw the first stone because I am a sinner as well. But I do believe that God should be first in everything else. I think wanting to get knowledge is okay as long as, you know, the creator's first. But if people don't do that, I'm not God, so I'm not going to judge nobody. But I do think it's important, and that's what my podcast is about, basically.
You know, and getting back to the Christians, a bit, you know, being a Christian, and I have been in churches where I can understand why people don't want to go to church sometimes. I mean, just the way they're treated. And to me, a true church will open the door to, you know, the intoxicated person that comes through the door, or the person with the narcotic problem. And that is, they need the church more so than, you know, the people that are sitting there. And I, you know, like I said, I have 5 Pentecostal preachers in my family. And I mean, I told my uncle one day, I said, you know, when we were growing up, people were fighting to get into the door at the church to be with God. And I feel like now God is fighting to get back into the church, because, and don't get me wrong, there, I see Christians doing a lot of great things in the world. I see them providing, I see them loving their neighbor. You know, I just see them making all the difference in the world. But somewhere along the way, something something dropped the ball, and I'm gonna tell you where I think it is. And I'm sorry I'm on a rant, but it's when we took the 10 Commandments down from,
Mm.
and I'm gonna tell you why. I mean, we had some pretty rough times in my life, and no matter what was going on in my life at home, when I would go to school, and every morning I'd walk in the main door and I'd see the 10 Commandments there,
Mm.
and subconsciously they taught me right from wrong, to love my
Amen.
neighbor, to love my friends, you know, to so you got a little bit of direction these days. There's just not a lot of direction, and
Well,
I do blame it on a lot of judgmental people.
no, and what you just said is key. Like, through my research, I mean, I had Pastor JB Hickson on. He got a couple books about the Luciferian agenda. And, you know, I truly believe, like, taking the 10 Commandments out of the classroom, that was planned. Like, everything, these elites who run the world behind closed doors, they plan hundreds of years. They pass it on to their kids. You know, in 50 years, like, my family won't remember, you know, half the stuff, but they got all the secrets, you know. And again, I think that ties back to the fallen angels as well. And that's why I go down every talk, anything, Bigfoot, this, that, because again, I believe it's all connected. And that's why I just try to expose whatever I can, because I think any piece of the puzzle could help open someone else's eyes or lead them down the path they need to go to get where they need to get to.
So, where do you want to take your podcast? I said, I know you said, you know, family first, paying the bills, everything, but what direction are you trying to take it?
Well,
Where
I
do you
like
see it?
having, where I would like to see it. I mean, I would like to reach more people. It takes time, obviously, but I like to have authors on to break down their books if I think it has something to do with that puzzle. But what I really like my next guest who's coming on, he heard me. My first podcast was on someone else's podcast. It was called the Flat Earth Files. And again, that's on Flat Earth. So a listener who listens to my podcast started there. He heard my episode. He emailed and he told me how much my story touched him and was similar to his story. And I just had him on and we talked. We were supposed to talk for an hour. We talked for an hour and a half. We felt like brothers. And that's really kind of where I would like to go, is to have normal, like not normal, regular people on, and just have a heart to heart, and what their path was like, where they're at, what their beliefs are. And that's probably the path I would like to go.
And here you are on the Not So Perfect Bigfoot show.
And I'm honored. Thank you.
You are, man. You rolling with it too. So that's fine. We'll stay on the spiritual side because it's the Not So Perfect Bigfoot show. We'll do what we want on here. If people don't like it, they can tune out. I'll tell you. I'll tell you about my experience. And since it's not an interview but a chat, I'm gonna steal your thunder. Um, so I was a law enforcement officer. I was supervisor on duty. We get a hot call, and where we get the hot call at, a lot of the elders lived on that road. And the last time we went down there, it's like four of us fighting like 20, 30 people.
Wow.
And needless to say, we got whooped, and it's okay because sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. And the next day I went back, spoke with the people in the neighborhood. And I told them I was going to give them their street back because these are people, they were elderly. It was a little dirt road. I said, I tell you what, next time they come back in your neighborhood, I'm gonna give you your street back because you're not gonna live in fear in your own home. A few months pass, and we get a hot call over there. About 40 head fighting, guns, knives. I said, okay. I said, I'm gonna beat my people out there, and I'm gonna assess the situation. But I remembered what I told those folks. Told them I was gonna give their street back to them. So I got on the radio, told my dispatcher, I said, have the jail vans ready because we're going to cuff and stuff. It's going to be the last time they come to these people's street and, show their rump like that. Because these people lived in fear. And I was on a straight road, August, sun out, beautiful day. I mean, had a Mountain Dew in my cup holder. I was running 90, which isn't fast. I mean, especially when you go to speeds, 120, 125, and, pursuits. And I was just trying to get there before my guys did. I didn't want them rolling into something that they shouldn't be in. I didn't have kids. I weren't married. I had nothing to lose. But, the one thing I always promised is I'd never knock on the door of one of my guys because of something I did. So it was personal to me. I wanted to go. I want to go, assess the situation, have the jail vans running through. My plan was to get on scene, and if there was really 40 head out there, and I was going to get NCSHP, which they don't play around, and get the city guys out there, and the next county over, and we were just going to clean house. And all of this was running through my mind. I was running about 90. And light sirens on. I was coming up on two cars, and it looked like they were going to yield for me. And I kept going, and they didn't yield. So at the last minute, I veered over to the left lane, and I veered over too far. And I seen this car coming. I didn't see it before. I seen it coming. So I had a choice to take out all three of us or to take myself out. So I took myself out. Wow. And my patrol car flipped 5 times head over tail. Now, anybody in law enforcement will tell you the one thing you don't want to do, and the one thing you don't want to do is go on a hot call with your seatbelt on. You always pop your seatbelt off. I was about a mile, maybe a mile and a half. And I'd pop my seatbelt off. So when I was flipping head over tail, I got thrown over 40 yards.
Wow.
And the last thing I remember is seeing the car go over me. And I briefly woke up and I saw a silhouette over me. and the sun was just right in the back of them. So all I saw was a silhouette and just the sun around them. And I heard them praying, and they were praying like I used to hear them in the Pentecostal church.
Wow.
And then I went back out. And what had happened was they couldn't find me, and he had seen the wreck. So I went to a cotton field, and he found me, and my leg was literally over my head.
Oh.
On that go around, in my career, I've broken 47 bones throughout my total career because I was stupid, and I went forward sometimes when I should have not went forward. But in that, I broke 32 bones.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, he found me. He was praying over me, and I just remembered a silhouette. I just remember just the sun behind them, and all you saw was just the silhouette, and you could hear the prayer. And I went back out. Then I come back to, and I was looking over the shoulders of the EMS personnel. We were really tight because we worked a small town county at the time. I had left the larger county, come to a smaller department because they needed females on the road. They were trying to get accredited, and I was stupid and went. And I saw the medics working on me, and I remember looking down and saying, "Man, that's gotta hurt." I was looking at myself,
Wow.
and then I started feeling, and everything just went black, and that's when they lost me. Um, so in the medic, they bagged me and all of that, and they life flighted me from Fayetteville, North Carolina to Duke Medical Center. I told my family I probably weren't going to make it overnight. Now, here's the cool thing. This is your show. This is not my show.
No, I love it.
But my sisters, they had called my family there because, they have to take you from this county to where the hospital's at. But they took me in the ER, got me stabilized, all that other stuff. And by the time Life Flight got there, I used to work in the county where the hospital was at. I used to be a canine officer there, so all those officers knew me. And my sister said when Life Flight come in and they were walking me out the Life Flight, she said when she walked out the hospital to the helicopter pad, she says as far as she could see, we had blue lights. She goes, there were blue lights lined up all up and down the streets. And she said everybody had their blue lights on, and they were standing outside of their cars, and just, some were crying. I remember my corporal crying. And she said she's never seen so many blue lights in her life.
Wow.
And so so my family left from there, went to Duke. They told my dad. My dad was my John Wayne. Okay, I was not his biological child, but he loved me and he gave me his name.
Amen.
And here's a man in his 70s, congested heart failure, gout, diabetes. He lived way at the coast, Ocean Isle Beach, North Carolina. The man drove from Ocean Isle Beach to Duke Medical Center every day to see me, and he would drive home, get some sleep, come back. And they told him, my dad, my sisters, my mom was there. There was cops showing up there. They told my parents, they said, well, she's probably not going to make it through tonight. And I did.
God is good.
But yeah, and every time I would start to come through, I would start to fight. And there's a couple times that I come to that the nurse was standing over me. You go into fight or flight. And one of my friends, bless his heart, he was the SF guy that I met. Really great guy. He said he told that nurse, he said, how were you? And she wakes up, I wouldn't be standing over her because she's a little bit mean. And she was standing over me, and I woke up, and I mean, it was on because you go into fight or flight. I didn't know what was happening to me. And so I stayed in induced coma for 4 months. Every time, my whole left body has been wired back together. I got a rod for, it's holding my femur together, a plate that holds my pelvis together. I broke every my neck should have killed me. But I broke every region of my spine. My left hand was crushed. Left side was crushed. The head trauma alone was just, but anyway, Dad was driving back and forth every day. And they finally told my dad, they says, you can't stay up here. I mean, there's literally no, we gave her enough stuff to knock her out, an elephant out for a month. And no sooner than he left, he got gone about an hour, I woke up.
Wow.
But let me tell you what went on behind the scenes. I had been in law enforcement for so long. I was an angry person. Seeing what people do to each other, you're there trying to help them, they're trying to fight you. The anger, the hate, it builds a wall up in you that I had been angry for so long. I thought it was a normal emotion. And I thank God used that anger because everything that meant something to me, I didn't have a lot in life. I didn't have a lot of friends in life. I mean, whatever. But everything that meant something to me, like I had a cat that lived 23 years old. I seen the cat, and I was trying to go in this tunnel, and she kept tripping me. And I'm like, why are you keep tripping me? I need to go in the tunnel. But I mean, looking back now, I don't know. The tunnel could have been death. I don't know. I don't think I was going through the light because I was so angry. Then it got to a point where I felt like I was drowning, and that is when I was drowning in my own fluid in my lungs. But I was trying to do my whole thing. I was so married to my job; it's the only thing I ever had in my life. Through the whole ordeal in my mind, I was getting up and I was going to work every day. Every day I was going to work. So when I was like my lungs were filling with fluid, I was on a rescue boat trying to pull people in. But then it started getting worse and worse and worse. And at the very end, I'm in a basement. And the one thing I was scared of more than anything in the world were snakes. And I was in a basement. And I've always worked in a specialty unit until, I went to the small county. And so I was very used to working with SRT or the SWAT. And I was in the basement. It was cold. It was damp. And snakes were falling on me. And I could feel them going. Now, mind you, that's the one thing that scares me the most. Some say, well, you're going to hell. Probably was. But I had a good heart, but having a good heart does not give you eternal life. I don't care what anyone says. But I could feel the snakes falling, thump, 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 thump. And I was so scared. I was so scared. And I could hear SRT walking around. It's like I was in a basement. I could hear them walking around the foundation. And they're like, my name back then was Barch. I'm like, where's Barch? Barch is at the county. I could hear them calling me, Barch, where's Barch? And I wanted to talk and I couldn't. About that time, in the cellars and the old buildings, you have these stairs, you open the kitchen, like the kitchen door or the cellar door was actually the kitchen door, and it would open and you would go down the steps to the basement where your potatoes were kept and all of that, and it was cold and damp. Them daggum snakes were just falling on me. And the door opened to the cellar, and this really bright, beautiful light come out. And it was just golden, warm. And I knew if I could get up those stairs into that light, I'd be safe. And I would be with my crew. But I was scared because snakes were coming down, and the sister does not like snakes. and I heard a voice behind me. And I mean, I had authority to it, but it's almost like a father speaking to a child. And said, have faith and believe, and you will not, or you shall not be harmed. Snakes are falling on my shoulders. I weren't moving. And then it come back with a little bit more force. It said, have faith and believe, and you shall not be harmed. And I got up and started going to the stairs and started walking in the light. When I woke up, I was looking at the pastor of the sheriff's office that I work with. He was praying over me.
Wow.
So this is what I tell people. They say, Victoria, you must be really special because God sent you back in the world. You must have something really special to do. And I say, no. I say, God is the greatest fisherman. He throws the little fish back. And he threw me back in the pond of life. He says, you go grow. Next time I'll keep you. I just want to know I was not big enough to stay with him.
Wow.
So they said I'd never walk unassisted. They said a lot of things. I mean, the honor guard was planning my funeral, and I could not live by myself for a year. I lost everything. I literally woke up and I didn't have clean underwear and a toothbrush. I literally lost everything. They had foreclosed on my house. I mean, it's just, And my dad did try to pay the bills, but for whatever reason, the mortgage company just kind of bucked them on it. And all of my animals, I had my retired canine, and everybody used to call me Daisy Duke or Ellie Mae because I was always bringing possums home, and I had probably 8, 9 cats, 3 German Shepherds, a Rottweiler, and whatever else. They all went into foster care. And it took me a year to get them back. And I got all of my babies back. But when I was talking to my corporal, I said, this is what I saw. I see Eva here. The other medic, I can't remember his name. I think his name was Mike, was here. I said, you were over here. I said, you was bawling like a little baby. I said, but this is how I was laying. He says, you know what? You're right.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's my story.
It's a beautiful story. And I'm so glad you got through it. And, it definitely was God's grace, right? His plan is bigger than our plan. And I'm so glad he kept you here, and he loves us all that way. And I think, people tend to believe that, like when they hear something like your story or like my story, they're like, wow, you must be special. It's like, no, we're all special in his eyes. Nobody is lesser or greater. We're all his children. And it's a sad story, but it's a beautiful ending. And
well, here's the thing. I lived with my dad a year. So I got a whole year with because I was married to my job. I never did anything on Christmas. I never had kids. I was like the Queen of England. I was married to my job, but I was insanely good at it. I was kind to people, and I never judged people, but I was angry. And I'll tell you something that happened just before that. I was on patrol one night, and it was so cold that night. And I come across the gas station, and I seen this black male standing out there with alley coat on. And I had the flight jacket, the orange on the inside, the black outside. And I said, man, he's got to be cold. And I think it was like 12 at night. And, and I got out. I said, aren't you cold? Do you want to, sit in the car? He says, well, I'm waiting on someone. And I said, and when he was talking, you could tell he maybe had a learning disability, or maybe I hate to say, kind of, maybe I don't know. I could tell that he had something going on. And I said, have you eaten? He said no. And back then I was broke. I mean, I was, I mean, after a paycheck, I have 20 bucks in here. So I didn't have any money, and I was just like thinking, I was like, I can't leave him like this. And, he didn't want to ride anywhere. So I took my coat off and I gave it to him. Now he was way larger than me, but the coat fit him perfect. I said, you wait right here. So I drove about 10 miles across the county, and I ran into jail. I said, fix me something. And they fixed some peanut butter jelly sandwiches and some fruit and some apple juice. Grabbed it, and I went back, and I fed them, and I said, "Are you sure you're gonna be okay?" I said, "Yeah." I says, "Well, I got to go check the building, and I'll come back and I'll sit with you until your ride comes or what." I don't even know if somebody was picking them up. This was a small store. It was not lit at all. You're going to see car lights. No more. Then I drove around the building with my spotlight, checking the locks in the window, and I got back around the front. He was gone. He
Wow.
weren't up the road. He weren't down the road. Don't know. But he was gone.
Wow.
And I remember about what they always tell you, be careful who you entertain. It could be an angel unaware. Yeah.
Amen.
Anyway, that's my story. Let's move on to you. So anyway, that is might be something really good and spiritual for you to do. There's a lot of people out there that's had the same, more extraordinary than mine, and that might be a good place for you to take, because it really does. And but I'm gonna tell you something. I felt like I wanted to share my story, and like I said, I have a lot of church going Christian people in my family, and they were the first ones to tell me it didn't happen. It was my imagination, and that discouraged me. So, and I never told it. I mean, but yeah, I really believe that. Here's the two things I think: the way I treated the gentleman at the store, going to drive up assuming he was up to something, you know, gave him my coat. Love that coat. And fed him, and he just vanished. And the fact, I think, when I was in the basement, and the voice, it was just the most. I mean, it was like authoritative. It's just like, I love you, but you got to go. And I think, had I not had faith at that moment and went up the stairs into the light, I think I would have died. I
Wow.
think at that time I had the faith of a mustard seed in something that I couldn't see. And I
Mm.
think, had I stayed there with the snakes, I think I would have died.
Wow.
I'm convinced of it. But I think, for whatever reason, those two things kind of, I feel like maybe I got, because I was angry. I mean, they used to be like, "Sarge, you're crazy." No, I'm not crazy. I'm just tired of people beating people up, and you ain't gonna beat me up either. I've had so many head traumas, but I think the way I treated the gentleman, for whatever reason, it just corresponded with me having that second chance. And I'm gonna tell you what, when I woke up, the one thing about law enforcement doesn't give me credibility. Let me tell you that straight up. I've known a lot of people in law enforcement I would rather not be around. But I did not play those games. Whatever. But I think what gives you credibility in law enforcement is the way you treat people.
Mm.
And I think I was so angry at what I saw in the world and what people did in the name of love, what they did to the little kids, what they did to animals, what just people were mean. I think I lost a lot of faith there, but I was always kind to people. I
Mm.
mean, I've taken free punches in the booger box. I'm like, "Are you finished? Are you happy now? Okay, my nose is bleeding. Let's go." Okay. When I woke up, I had, those food line bags, plastic bags. I had 3 bags of those full of cards. I was getting so many flowers, and I couldn't have them where I was at. So my family would give them to patients that didn't have families, so they have, flowers. But I mean, they're continuously. And this one guy made a CD. This back during the day when we had CDs, and it took me a long time to be able to listen to it. But on the CD, he was like, "Sergeant, whatever my name was then. You don't remember me, but this is how you changed my life." And he says, "You come to my house, and you took a simple report, and you knew I was discouraged, and you told me not to stay in my place. I was capable of great things."
Mm.
And he said, you spent 30 minutes talking to me. And he says, I now have my own studio. And he did Christian music. And I can't remember it. I'll get that CD forever. And he went praying. He was praying that God restore me back to my grace and faith. I had no grace, by the way, and faith. And it was where two or more are gathered together as one, there I will be in the midst.
Amen.
And yes, and I regret misplacing that CD. But you never know the impact you have on people, no matter how
Yep.
minor it was. Okay, enough about me. Anyway, next.
No, I agree with you
This should be
totally.
the Victoria show, so I'm sorry, man.
No, I'm so glad you shared that with me. It's very inspiring, and I think that's the human race. We have greatness in us, and we could be good or we could be evil. And it's just that time of day, and sometimes it's good to keep that up front because life is hard. At least for me it is. It's hard. Everything's hard. And some days, like you said, sometimes I'm in a mood, stressed out, and somebody smiles at me or holds the door, and then I'm like, all right, then I'm like, Cliff, you're being an asshole, like, and that's what that little bit of goodness does. Like it hits you so hard, and it could just change your whole day. And that's why I really believe keeping faith above everything. It's important. And like you said, these Christians, like there are Christians, like they don't want to read Genesis 6, where it talks about giants and they fell and, had children with women, and they don't want to see that supernatural side of God. But that is God. He's supernatural. Like this place is supernatural. Bigfoot is supernatural. He is, I believe, a creation of God in some form or fashion. So I think as long as we put God first, we should dig into everything. We should try to learn about everything because that's who we are. We like to learn. We like adventure. But as long as we keep our faith first, I think
Mhm.
everything else will work out the way it's supposed to.
And I tell you something else. I really try to do with my show. Like I'll have a non-believer on with a researcher,
Yeah.
and the only thing is just talk.
Yeah, that's
But
it.
I do believe that Christians and someone in the cult or that's I don't know how to say it right. I'm sorry if I offend anyone. They should be able to talk without judgment because you never
Yeah.
know what you got in common.
Yeah.
You never know where. And I hope to bring that. But most of all, I wanted to tell people a story, and I feel like I really just crapped you out of the a show by telling my story.
Not at
So I
all.
gotta have you back on because I stole your thunder. I'm
No,
sorry.
I loved it. I mean, I'm so grateful that you would share something so personal and something that brings up that emotion. I love that. I love real, honest, like, how do you feel? What are you going through? Like, I don't want the facade or the mask that we all wear sometimes. Like, I like when someone could just talk to me from the heart. And I loved it. I enjoyed it. I had a great time.
Oh, we stay how long as you want. Now I work closing it out. Um, but that may be a place where down the road. But if you want to go out, I did meet someone that says Connecticut is a real hot spot. Um, has and you never hear anything from Connecticut. Um, but we
Western
could try
Mass
to
is
get.
a hot spot too. Like Western
Yeah.
Mass, where the mountains are, there's a lot. I've heard of so many Bigfoot stories on other Bigfoot podcasts because I like to listen to them. Like I still listen to them pretty often, and the only thing, I'll be honest, the only thing, because where I'm at now, sometimes when I hear them talk about the Bigfoot, I just feel like they almost idolize it too much. Like I think it, like, let's say it is an Eliud and it is pot angel and they have powers. I could see why people would be drawn to that, that specialty. But if you really look at it and realize it's from the creator, that the creator should get that praise. And like all that attention, but I'm not knocking it. I think we should have passions and enjoyable things. But again, I think as long as we put God first, and it's hard, I can't do it all the time. You know, I struggle with it on occasion and I try to check myself, but it is
I
a
will.
fun topic.
I got a friend, Richie Daniels. I would ask you if you watch the show, but nobody watches my show. I don't care. It's a hobby. Richard Daniels did a study. He came out with a book this month. He did a study about what the effects of experiencing a cryptid did to people
Yeah.
and their reaction to it. And he is someone that I think you would really enjoy talking to. I mean, now he's raw and he's flesh and blood, but it's okay to have. But that is also, if you want to stay on the Bigfoot topic, I really think, Richie Daniels. I got a buddy in Florida, Richard again, Farabee. I mean, these are people that would talk to you and no judgment, man. I mean, they'll
Yeah.
take. I'd be more than happy to send them your way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm always down to talk to somebody new.
So, anything else you want to touch base on, sir? Since I stole your show, and I'm so sorry.
No, I really enjoyed it, and like I said, I'm so glad you told me that because it's an inspiring story, and it's I think a lot of people will be inspired, and don't give up. The podcast game is hard. There's so many podcasts, but if you just keep doing it and being yourself, the right people will find it. You know what I mean? In the time it's supposed to happen. Because I used to get mad. Like I'll tell everybody, you sent me the email and I didn't know, and I thought you were a few minutes late, and I was like, I'm not waiting, I'm jumping off because I've been blown
That
off.
that
But
weren't me. That weren't me. I just I
it was
said, well,
me.
maybe
I'll
no,
own
it
up
wasn't.
to it.
I'm just saying we got something got crossed, and anybody that knows me knows I am not the brightest crayon in the box. And honestly, I'm probably the white crayon because I am not bright whatsoever. But it happens. That's why I call it not so perfect Bigfoot show. We are only human. We make mistakes. None of us are perfect, and honestly, we're too hard on ourselves. And
Yeah.
it you are welcome back anytime you want to. I would, if you are interested, I will reach out to Richard, and I'll pass you along the information. And I mean, just it never hurts to get another opinion, and also, seeing I'm always clawing the sand for shows, maybe I could just put the three of you on. Just you say your view, and they'll tell you why they don't agree with you. You can tell them why you don't agree with it because I mean, they're both of them are just really cool dudes. Now, Richie Daniels, he's kind of hard, but every once in a while he'll crack a smile, and you're like, yeah, teddy bear. Richard Farabee, he's getting really better at his humor, so I got to give it to him. But that's if you want to look them up on YouTube, it's BFFG, Bigfoot Forest Chunks on YouTube.
Yeah, and again, I don't think, like you said, I don't know everything. Nobody knows everything, but I think everybody has a perspective. We all got a different perspective from our life and what we've gone through. So anybody could bring something. There might be a gem in something that everybody says. Everybody got something to offer. So yeah, I love talking to everybody.
All right, so I asked you before the show if there was anyone you wanted to give a tribute to. Have you been thinking about that?
I have, and I got it.
All right, well, I'm fixing to give you full screen. It is finally your show for real.
All right, so my tribute, call it lame, but I'm going to give my tribute to Jesus Christ, because before I committed fully to him, I was lost. I was lost in pain. I was lost in trauma. And when I fully gave myself over to Jesus. My family's been healed. And I've been healed. I'm a different person today from having that faith and having that relationship with Jesus and trying to get to know more through the Bible and through prayer. And it has changed my life dramatically. And I hope no matter, where you are in life, that you at least give it a chance and read the Bible and learn about the stories. Cause I'm telling you, all the truth of stuff, Bigfoot, I honestly believe it all connects back to the Creator, God, and his son, Jesus Christ. So that's it. And I appreciate having me on. It was a good time.